Welcome to the mid. 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 You're listening to the mid.
Wendy,
Teresa,
welcome to the mid. Episode
8. Episode
Woohoo!
8.
That's a nice round number.
It is.
So I want to tell you something.
Okay.
Your birthday is coming up.
It is.
It is. And you are planning a trip to me with your beloved shortly after, what, the 14th? Or you're coming on Valentine's Day, right?
We're coming on Valentine's Day, yeah.
So I want to tell you that I've booked us dinner on the 15th, a reservation at the restaurant we discussed, Ray's
Yay.
Bistro Bakery for anyone who's local. And it's a great menu. And I'm really excited to tell you that I called them today for a reservation and I asked for 6 p.m. But they said, could you do 5:45? Because we can actually offer you a better table. And I was like, hell yes, I can do 5:45.
That's fantastic.
We have a 5:45 reservation at Ray's Bistro Bakery on Saturday, the 15th for your birthday.
That is perfect.
I booked it
Absolutely
and I felt
perfect.
so happy with that time. I was like, I tried for 6, but they gave me 5:45. Well, how long does it take to order though, right? You're gonna look at the menu.
Well, that's it.
We're
You're
gonna
have a
order a
drink.
drink.
Yeah. There's no
5:45 is
rush.
we're not gonna start eating till 6:30.
Yeah, for sure.
If I book it later, we're gonna eat at 7:30.
That's
No.
very late.
I plan for us to be back home in our pajamas by 7:30, 8 p.m.
I like it.
I mean, come on.
I like that. That is perfect. That is the perfect
Yeah.
50th
Happy
birthday I
birthday.
could ask for.
Who you? We're both turning 50 within the next month to 2 months. Is it 2
We
months? Hold on.
are.
Yeah. How are you feeling
Yeah.
about that?
I'm not feeling great.
No?
I'm not feeling terrible either. It's not like 50 is old or anything, but I feel like I did when I turned 30. Like I just didn't want it. I think because in my head, I feel like I'm turning 50, but I still feel like I'm like 38 or something.
But I think that's the point. It's just a number.
Yeah, it is.
You're living a good life. You're happy.
Absolutely. But I think it's more like physical because when I turned 40, all kinds of new stuff started happening. And now I'm worried for the 50s. Like, is there a whole new slew of new stuff coming my way physically?
I have to think it's going to get better in some respect because I think the 40s is very like perimenopause, menopause heavy. And all of those kind of adjustments and the aches and the creaks and the like, I'm sure that accelerates, but I can't think it's going to get a whole lot worse, I say.
I
But
hope not.
you're like really active. You're physically active. You work
Yeah, it's
out.
not so much that. It's more skin.
It's your
To be
skin.
totally superficial. I don't want like I think I'm getting gray hair. I can't
Oh,
quite tell
you're the last of us.
because I'm
Okay,
blonde,
asshole. You're the
but
last of us.
and it's I don't like it. So I like this morning when I cut my own hair today and
It
I'm
looks
looking
really
at my
good, by the
hair.
way.
Thank you. I was looking at my hair.
Maybe your memory's going to go in your 50s.
Oh Christ, that's already going.
Yeah, like right now.
I think I saw some grays, but I'm not entirely sure. So when I come, you're gonna have to check my head.
I'll confirm for you.
Thank you.
The only thing, so definitely aches and pain. Like I don't like, and I've got like weird stuff. Like I've got my hips are degenerating at a faster rate because I had unknown arthritis and all of this stuff. I don't know. I like my brain so much better as it gets older, though.
Yeah, there is that. Like I do like my sensibility.
I feel so much more solid and content than I did
Yeah,
in earlier
for sure.
years. Like I would never trade those feelings for being younger. Like I know it comes with a neck waddle and loose skin and all of that. And that I don't enjoy.
Hmm.
I really don't. I don't enjoy looking in the mirror and seeing parts of my mother's aging face. That's what I don't enjoy. Like that part I could do without. But would I trade it for going? No, never.
No, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, you try. It's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So it's your turn, my friend.
It is my turn. And it's funny. I was away this weekend and I still hadn't known my question. And I woke up Sunday morning with this like creativity brain vomit of like 9 questions for future episodes. And it
All
wasn't
right.
until about like right before we started talking today that I knew which one I was going to pick. So I've
All
done
right.
zero research on this.
Perfect.
However, I think it's a pretty good topic.
So did it come to you today out of the 9 questions when you were choosing it? Did you choose it because of any particular reason, like something going on, or it's just it came to you?
No, it just came to me. Maybe a little bit with the circumstances of the day, but I'll just get to it. So,
Okay, get to it.
and you can judge for yourself. So, my question is focused all around vulnerability and
Okay.
what it means to you and how and if you implement that in your relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, vulnerability is a big one for me.
Yeah.
I think I struggled with it a lot when I was younger. I think I had a pretty big wall up when it came to being vulnerable. I saw it a bit more as a weakness. And then as I've aged, and especially I think it happened probably more professionally first. Probably because when I got into a leadership role at work, I read a whole lot, and part of that was Brene Brown, Daring to Lead, and
Mm-hmm.
all these different leadership books, and using vulnerability more as a strength than a weakness, and using it to relate to people that you need to relate to in a leadership role. And I have found that works undeniably better than any other tactic I've used in dealing with, tough situations at work, having to give a coworker, feedback, or having to give someone who reports to you feedback, making them feel comfortable so that the conversation isn't just you talking at them, right? It's you
Mm-hmm.
relating to them. Or yeah, and even having feedback on their performance and trying to like understand where they are and trying to put yourself in a place in your life that you've related to being that way, whether it's, I've seen employees struggle with their family situations and that might affect their work performance or whatever, and trying to help, like trying to relate to them on that level so that I can take on a perspective and then come at it from a place of understanding, as well as, yeah, well, this is where we need to get to, but I get where you're coming from and how do we work together to get you where you need to be. Um, so
Okay.
vulnerability probably came to me there first. And then, wow, relationship wise, it's kind of loaded because I was in a relationship for many years where I felt like my vulnerability was definitely a weakness because it was a setup to me to be hurt, right? Like I was in not the
Okay.
healthiest relationship, and no disrespect to my ex-husband. It was just not a healthy relationship. And being in a new relationship over the past 5 or 6 years and you have to change. I think, if you've come through at our age and you're recoupling into a new relationship, you kind of have that opportunity to look at what wasn't working in your last relationship. And it's never
Right.
just one person. I can't lay all the blame. It was also my approach and
Mm-hmm.
developing unhealthy habits through that unhealthy relationship. And I had to really look at that and be vulnerable. And that was tough. That's tough. Like, because it kind of, I think I used vulnerability as a shield in a way so that I wouldn't get hurt. Sorry, I didn't use vulnerability that way. I used the opposite of vulnerability that way, like a wall I'd build up, kind of
Okay.
expecting the worst, not letting someone in completely or to see where my fears lay or having those conversations because I'd be afraid I looked weak. And once I gave someone that opening, they were going to hurt me or use it to hurt me or so
Right.
that was tough. And I think even from a friendship perspective, I think in the last, I don't know how many years, like we talked about in our first episode about friendships changing over time, I've learned through some hard lessons in friendships about being vulnerable. And there's a lot of gifts in that vulnerability, right? Like you can connect so much deeper with someone if you're truly vulnerable with them.
Like how so? Because this is an area that I continuously struggle with. I always have. And I always have a little bit of a wall up. I don't like people to see me cry. It's just a struggle I've always dealt with. So how do you purposefully implement being vulnerable in your day-to-day or like in your relationships?
Leaning into the uncomfortable moments. So when you know something's uncomfortable and you feel it in your body and you feel that, I think different people feel it different ways because everybody's vulnerability is really specific to them and their experience and, what in their life has built those walls and made them not want to be vulnerable. So you feel
Mhm.
it somewhere, right? Like either you feel sick to your stomach. Like if I'm going to have a hard conversation at work, I feel it like I feel like sick, like I feel kind of physically ill in my more in my
Okay.
stomach than anything. And
Right.
then I just say to myself, like, this is going to be uncomfortable, but if I want to get to a meaningful place with this person, then I have to lean into that feeling. Like, I have to be okay with that feeling and not change my tactics to make myself feel better in the short term. And
Okay.
I think that's probably the same way. So if you and I are having a conversation and we hit on something that's, I think you and
Sensitive
I,
or
it's a hard one because you and I do that
yeah.
probably all right. So say you're doing that with a loved one, with someone close in your family, and you're doing it. The impulse might be to be like, okay, we're not going to dive deep there because I'm going to bring up some things that might be hard to hear
Right.
or have to say things that might be difficult to say. So a tendency would be to avoid that type of conversation or that type of
Exactly.
confrontation.
Yeah.
So it's about knowing, I think, like being self-aware enough to know when that moment's happening and choose the harder path.
Okay.
And even though you're feeling that vulnerability, but I think a lot of power comes from saying it, saying, "Oh, I'm feeling like this is hard for me to say," because then it kind of lets the other person know that you're not coming at them from a place
Attackingly.
of poor intent or anything like that, right?
Right.
You're just saying like, I'm having a really hard time saying this. And I've said that in like intense conversations in my relationship where I've been like, this is not an easy place for me to be. Give me a minute to say what I need to say and articulate it.
Hmm.
Because the worst thing is have to rush through a conversation like that or have to rush your thoughts. And it's having that space and time to say exactly like the real simple truth of whatever you're feeling at that time.
Okay.
But I think in the long run, it's leaning into that really uncomfortable feeling because that's where growth comes from too. Growth doesn't come from easy things. It doesn't come from easy
That's true.
conversations. It comes from
Yeah.
those moments where you challenge yourself to say what's really happening.
Yeah. It's funny how like we're conditioned to not be vulnerable as we grow up, right? Like, I mean, even the definition of vulnerability is negative. It's completely negative. And yet you were saying like you introduced me very briefly to Brené Brown, her name
Yeah,
is, I
Brene
think.
Brown. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the impression I got from watching that one TED talk was that it's totally the opposite of what I've always thought. It's actually a positive thing. So I think there's a big shift that needs to happen for people emotionally going into the workplace, going into relationships, everything, because it's a hard thing to overcome. It really is. Like it sounds easy to say, just choose the harder path. But when you're
Well, it's not
there,
easy.
no,
No, it's not
when
easy.
you're there, it's all consuming. It's really, really difficult.
But I think too, it's a practice thing as well, because once you do it, especially with I think it's harder in a personal relationship, whether it's with a child, a spouse, whatever,
Yeah, probably.
a close friend, a parent, whatever it might be. I think it's harder because you don't get to leave that person, right? Like you're living with that
Yeah.
person. At work, you've got some space you can take and whatnot. But I think once you've done it once or twice and you see the benefit of it, it's like a practiced habit, right? And then you
Okay.
reposition what vulnerability is, and you can even call it something different, right? Like you can
Yeah.
treat it however you need to. I think the shift in the workplace that's been great for me is that it's allowed me to take different perspectives of people and their behavior.
Okay.
Right. So if I see someone that's acting really protective or invulnerable and they have a wall up, I'm like, okay, well, they're protecting something because they feel fear, right? Because that's when I close up is when I'm feeling fear. So I
Yeah.
assume that's kind of a global human experience is to close up or close down, shut
Hmm.
down when you're feeling fear. So then my approach is different. And I would say something like, I get that this might cause you some discomfort or make you frightened that you're say, like losing a shift, right? Say someone feels like they've lost a shift. I just dealt with something like this recently at work where they felt, and so my approach might be like I think that maybe you're fearful of the fact that you're losing some positioning here or that you're losing
Hmm.
something that's valuable to you, right? Like you word it in whatever that might be for that situation. And what it immediately does, if it's a good situation, most of the time it works. I'm not saying it works every time, is it disarms that person. Once that person's disarmed and they're not coming in full of tension and full of fear and then you are at a place where you can have a much better conversation and you've solved something. If you just want to have a disciplinary conversation with someone and say like, say you can't do this, you must do this, you shouldn't have done this, Sure, like it might get the job done, but it also creates probably some seed of negativity or resentment within that person. Maybe they share that with someone else and it breeds this kind of
Yeah.
unhealthiness. And I deal with this a lot at work because it's my workplace is much smaller than I used to be at, right? Like I used to be at a much larger workplace. There was many more leaders and there was many more people in different levels of leadership. And now it's kind of me and one other person and then the frontline staff. And we're all in it together all the time. So those conversations have become much harder because I don't get to just say something and walk away and go to another office or go
Yeah.
like I used to.
It's
Now I'm
close
in that
quarters.
office. Yeah. And I see them and I see the ripple effect. And it's really challenged my game when it comes to those conversations. I've probably gotten more wrong at this workplace than I have anywhere else and had to come back with a different approach or understand, some history. And I probably came in a little bit maybe arrogant that I already had all the conversations I needed to have. And I was just going to have those same conversations with new people. And I'm like, nope,
Mhm.
this is a whole new ball game. So I think that's like being in like I guess challenging your own ego too and challenging your own sense of I've got this, I know this. Because I think that's a really easy place for us to get. And it's a
Okay.
safe place to get as we get older, right? Like, oh, I've already
Yeah.
parented this person. I've already been through this. I've already done this. So to
Yeah.
go in and be curious about the fact that maybe you haven't done that, maybe you don't know every situation, that's a
Hmm.
tough one because then you're
It
challenging your
is.
ego, right? And you're like the
Yeah.
ego is a sneaky little fucker. It comes in
Yeah.
everywhere and it makes you think you're right. A lot of the time you're not right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
for
hugely
sure.
vulnerable, right? To have to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Leave your ego at the door.
And
That
it's
is a
tough.
hard
And I think
one.
that's the biggest work that you do all the like, I mean, I think that if you allow yourself to have that challenge in your life to, I'm going to challenge myself to like not have my ego take the driver's seat when I'm in certain situations. It's constantly like reevaluating, looking at what you've done, going, did that come from my ego or did that come from a truer place? And always that truer place is always going to be more vulnerable, right? Because you're not in protection mode.
That's actually a really good way to look at it, like an approach. Instead of focusing on the feeling of being vulnerable, focus more on leaving that ego behind, because like you said, it will result in you just automatically becoming more vulnerable. That's actually a really good exercise. I'm going to try this. Because I don't care what anybody says out there. Every one of our listeners, everybody has ego,
We all do. I
for
don't think you
sure.
ever get rid of it. And I think sometimes it's helpful in certain situations, but I think it's the awareness that comes with knowing when it's driving
Hmm.
versus when you are like, okay, wait a second, that's my ego speaking. That's not actually what I'm trying to get done here. Because if
Yeah.
you're in self-protection mode, you don't get anything done except for maybe short-term feeling better.
Yeah.
Right? You might walk away and go, whew, I avoided that conflict or I avoided
Yeah.
that tough situation and I
It was a
feel better
close
in the
one.
interim. Yeah. Or it feels like, like when you've had a bad day, curling up in front of the fire and watching a movie that you've already seen. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you're like,
Hmm.
I know what's about to happen. I feel good about that. I'm taking care of myself. But you haven't had, like, you've missed an opportunity, I think, sometimes. It's not
Okay.
supposed to be easy. Human relationships aren't supposed to be always easy. Like if you had to tell me something, right? If you thought I was dealing with something in a way that was like either hurtful to someone else or harmful to myself, or I was hurting your feelings, like it's not easy, but you'd have to trust that I would hear you and get them out. But it's not comfortable. It's not going to be comfortable, but
No.
chances are it would lead to a deeper place for the two of us.
True.
Is that why
Yeah.
you're bringing this up, or do you want to say something?
So, no. No, I just found myself thinking more about that today. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good one because I know you're very passionate about this topic as well. And it just got me on this like spiral, literally like, I don't know, 10 minutes before we started talking today. Uh Thinking about Brené Brown and like all of that stuff and all of it. And I just thought, okay, well, then that's the topic.
I did like not just I'm a fan of hers. Don't get me wrong. I like what she has to say and I always find it helpful and I always think yeah, she's really evolved and she's got a lot of things figured out. I did so there's her leadership book and then there's a workbook to kind of lead your team through the daring greatly, I think it's called process.
Hmm.
I stopped at some point because it was actually I was leading a group of people, very different women through this. And at one point, it felt like it got too emotional for the workplace. So I am challenged by that because I like the idea of bringing vulnerability into the workplace, but I also think there's a point where you open a floodgate and some stuff doesn't belong at work.
Yeah, like a time and a
Right.
place
If
kind of
someone,
thing.
yeah, especially in a group, like if someone wants to come to me and say, I'm struggling with this, and we have a different conversation, and that's great. That's no problem. That means they trust me and I can, however, interact with them. But then if it turns into a big boo-hoo session and different people are crying, like I did lose my rudder there when I was like, because that's what happened. Like people were crying, thinking about their father that had passed and
Oh
this and
my
that. I'm like,
God.
oh, now I'm leading a group of like a bereavement group and I'm out of
It's
my
like a
depth here.
self-help group.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna help us at work. But the way that so I stopped doing that and I said to the guys, like, I'm not trained. I'm out of my arena here, but I said what I'm hoping for is because they were all dealing with a lot of frontline staff from many different backgrounds, from many different situations, working many different jobs with many different challenges. And I just wanted them to have an approach that included that person's perspective.
Okay.
That's where I wanted the vulnerability to lie. When it became something like a lot more, then it freaked me. Like I'm not qualified. I don't know.
So is Brenier Brown then more focused on like the workplace, or does she actually deal with like all aspects of
I think she
vulnerability?
studies vulnerability as like one of her big, like that's like her
Okay.
thesis is vulnerability is a superpower, I guess, rather than a hindrance, right? And then
Okay.
by stepping into that vulnerability, it enriches our lives, our relationships, our workplace, all of it. That particular book and that particular path like that she has that you can follow is workplace related, but it's woven throughout all of her work. And I haven't read all of her books. I haven't watched all
Hmm.
of her talks. I've read a couple of them and I think like they're so relatable. And I love a story. I love being told something in a story format. So it speaks to me because she's like, she deals with social work from from a storytelling perspective. So I love a story. I love illustrate to
Yeah.
me how this has worked through a story. And I'm very like, that's how,
Captivated.
yeah. And I learned from that. So I
Yeah.
like her approach. I think there's a lot of different approaches though. Like, I mean, I like a lot of, and I don't read a ton of self-help stuff or because I don't like being told what to do. I like being given tidbits of stuff and then you kind of weave it into your
Hmm.
own life and figure it out.
Yes. Yeah.
Like following one doctrine of one person, we're all infallible, we're all human. Like you take little bits
Yeah.
of stuff that works for you in your life and then you try and figure it out. But nobody ever has the whole picture. Like nobody's winning at it all. Like
No.
who do you know that I had an incident like a thing at work today where I don't know. I have to think about whether or not I handled it really well. And I was angry at someone. And I don't know if it went well. I don't know if it's going to go well afterwards because they walked out kind of peeved at me too. So I don't know how that's going to unfold. So
Why were
it's
you
not
like
like,
angry or?
oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
no, they did something that I found really like, and I said that, I said, I'm really disappointed and this doesn't speak to the character that I know of you. Like it was really disappointing. And I said, I don't think you've looked at the impact of your actions because she did something pretty, I thought quite not nice to another coworker. But
Okay.
did I like going into something when you're angry? I don't know. Is that the like, I don't know if I handled it well. Time will tell.
Well, I don't think you can control every situation either, right? Like, I mean, anger pops up.
Yeah, but I think
You
I
know?
always kind of think that in my like I'm supposed to be professional and supposed to be able to not go into something very emotional, but I really like resonated with the experience this other coworker had with what this person did and what the impact could have been. And I was like, wow, man, that's
Harsh.
I don't think it's bad to go in and be like firm and I was and I didn't like relent on that, but I think I was kind and I think I was respectful, but I was mad.
Yeah. But that's okay, I think.
Yeah. People management, there's some days where I'm just like,
I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. It's too
it's
much for
really
me.
it's rewarding at the best of times. It's really rewarding. And I can't tell you how much it's taught me about myself because you have to be like vigilant in your inventory of how you handle things, right? Otherwise you
Yeah.
become kind of power hungry or even like even people in really, jobs that not like my job's not super important, but someone could take that authority and run with it and be a real jerk. So I'm always challenging myself to be like diplomatic and not be too soft and not be too hard and not be, it's constantly balancing that. So that, I don't
Yeah.
know, bringing vulnerability into that work sometimes, and other times it can backfire. So
Okay.
I don't have it all figured out. I don't have anything figured out.
So, looking at vulnerability from your younger years to midlife, do you have a different perspective on it?
Right. I don't know that I was vulnerable at all. I mean, I didn't grow up in a home where vulnerability was like valued.
Priority one.
No, it wasn't valued. My mother was probably, God love her, the least vulnerable person.
Well, I think it's also we grew up in an era of like big girls don't cry,
Yeah, and
right?
it's weak, right? Like vulnerability is
Yeah.
weakness.
Yeah. But now I think it's changing because I'm seeing a lot more vulnerability in teenagers, like nowadays,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's a really good thing. But at the same time, I struggle with my own inner battle of how I was raised in the whole big girls don't cry thing. And I do struggle with that.
Stuck
Like
it up,
sometimes in the back
buttercup.
of my, yeah, exactly. Sometimes in the back of my head, I'm like,
Oh, me too.
holy drama, or you know what I mean? Like I don't say it, but
Well, I don't
it's
know.
a
Is that
battle.
all vulnerability, though? Is that all vulnerability, or is that like there's a bit of snowflaking going on?
What does
I
that
hate
mean?
to say it, like a snowflake, sound like the fragility of people now. It worries me for the next
Oh,
generation how easily shaken some people can get, or like how so I don't know if it's a sign of just self-importance and entitlement too. And I kind of shun that because I don't know if it's maybe because I was raised by older parents and I'm post-depression era parents, like they were right at the end of the
hmm,
depression. So it's a different mentality where you do things for the greater good, right? Where you do things because it's what's best for the collective.
right.
And I'm seeing a lot of dissension from that, like the whole anti-vaxxer movement. And I know that might be like piss some people off, but vaccinations are done to protect the greater good.
Yes.
Polio was eradicated because everyone decided it was the right thing to do because people were suffering and dying. So
Yes.
everybody got vaccinated, even if it didn't affect them. Same
Hmm.
with smallpox. It's the same with measles, which is now coming back. Thank you very much because of the anti-vax movement. So when COVID came around, and those of us that were working frontline or close to frontline or within that perimeter saw people dying who were not going to die at that time.
Yeah.
And then we were going home and dealing with people in our lives or in our perimeter that were anti-vaxxers. I really took offense to that because it's like, you selfish people.
Yeah.
By protecting, and no, it didn't mean you weren't going to get it. And no, it didn't mean that you weren't still going to get sick. And no, all of those things weren't promised. And yes, you were being asked to do something that wasn't just for you because maybe you were healthy and maybe the people in your home were healthy, but you were being asked to do something to protect the greater good
Yeah.
because people were dying. I saw a number of people die. I saw one woman have to bury her mother and father within months of each other. And
Oh,
they were going to die within maybe 5 to 10 years. They were not going to imminently die.
right.
And so I can't hear this argument of no, because my personal rights.
Belief.
I'm
Yeah. Oh,
sorry,
right.
but
Yeah.
there's times when you're called upon to do something outside of yourself because it's the right thing to do for your community or for your society. And I think that's gone to the wayside. And with that, to tie that back to what you're talking about, there's this air of entitlement in this, not just this generation, because all of the freedom fighters and the anti-vaxxers are not necessarily of this generation. They're older. I have a really hard time where I
Mm.
think we've all become very individualistic. I think, and this ties
Hmm.
into whatever episode, the responsible irresponsibilities episode we were talking about, the self-help movement, because it's all about this navel gazing. Let me make myself better, and then it will affect everyone else.
Yeah.
Sure, to a certain degree, yeah, work on
Yeah.
yourself, work on anything that your issues and resolve those issues, and you'll be a better person for the people around you. But if that becomes your sole work, if that becomes the work that you're doing, and at the risk of the relationships around you, and at the detriment to the people that you're supposed to be giving to,
Then you're just
then
selfish.
hasn't it gone wrong? Like, isn't there a point where
Yeah.
that it's gone wrong? And then can't you see that there's markets built around your belief in this system
Yeah.
of self-improvement? Like, if you
Yeah.
really want to self-improve that badly, go freaking volunteer somewhere because you will see in,
Absolutely.
5 sessions how that not thinking about yourself as the primary thing for 2 hours a week or whatever it might be is so much more fulfilling
Yeah.
than
100%.
sitting there and navel gazing and thinking about like what this tantra workshop on my
Yeah.
navel will do for me. And I just think it's a really big black hole and it leads us away from the greater good.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah, you're
think
right.
that's kind of produced these snowflakes. When I say snowflakes, it's like you're so fragile. I can't say anything. I can't do anything. And that's what, even when we were talking about teachers last week, there's like their teachers are faced with this new generation of these kids that are so
Yeah.
entitled and you can't rock the boat. And I will say, like, I think for the most part, I'm hopeful. Like when I watch my kids now, in their very late teens, early 20s, I think the resilience that you teach your kids from showing them some hard times and from saying no and from saying you're not the most important person in the room. You're not that special. We're like you're with now you're in a class with 300 kids that we're all told they're the most special. Like that's not
Yeah.
serving anyone, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ruining the professor's
No, for
life.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
so we all aren't that special. And when we start to believe we are, it really, I think things
Can
can go
cause.
awry very
Yeah.
quickly. There
Yeah.
you go. There's my long-winded answer. I don't even know if I answered the part about the children and did you talk about children? Did you? The children. Now I
Yeah, you
really
did.
sound
You
old.
did.
You know what's wrong with the kids today.
Oh
But I don't
God.
think resilience is as celebrated as it used to be, right? Like I think resilience is an underfed well in people now.
Yeah, now it's like I think the mentality because resilience is an important lesson to learn. And I think a lot of parents are sheltering their kids so much nowadays and protecting them from any of those lessons that they had to learn, those hard lessons that they don't want them to have to learn that. They want them to have an easier life and the whole thing when in reality
We had pretty
they're
easy lives. Like really. Yeah, sure. Do we have hardship? Do we have sure. But what are you protecting people from?
well, I don't know. I mean, I think it is different. I mean, we didn't have any of the resources we have nowadays, right? Like it was definitely harder for us, I think, to grow up. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I say that, but there's a whole bunch of different issues nowadays that we didn't have to face, right? So, no, I'm wrong. Never
But then I
mind.
think we also, so they have more issues to face. I would agree with that, right? Like they have like what we talked about, the social media, like constantly, if you're being bullied,
Yeah.
it's nonstop and it's
Yeah.
faceless and nameless. But instead of helping them build resilience, in a lot of cases, I see people being like, oh, let me help you. Like
Like
it's not,
coddling.
it's a thank you. The oh, let me help you didn't quite translate that. But it's a coddling and a like protection. And I understand the instinct to protect. I'm a parent. I get it. I've like done it when I shouldn't have done it.
Hmm.
And I wish I would have let my kids at some point fail safer and not jumped in to intervene in situations. I think I've done that and I wish I hadn't. But I also hope I tempered that with being like, well, this is the world you live in. So how do we get you through it?
Yeah.
And you still are standing tall and you're not feeling like you've been chipped down the whole way, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I think our response as parents to this new world where they do have all these challenges hasn't always helped them meet those challenges.
Right. Agreed.
That would be I mean, I'm so guilty of it, so it's hard for me to even point those fingers.
We all are to some extent, right?
Oh, sometimes when I hear like what kids complain about, and like even like the cars, like having a car at a certain age or the access to a vehicle. I mean, do you remember the bronze car I drove? Did you ever see like, or were we not
Yeah.
really? That thing was like a death trap. It was owned by a man with cerebral palsy who I don't know whether or not he should have been driving. And he had modified the car by himself it was a shit box, and my foot used to get caught between the accelerator and the brake, and I'd be like jerking along the road, and then my parents took it away from me because they saw this happen once, and they say, "Yeah, you can't have this car. This is unsafe." So, I mean, and what was I going to do? I used their K card. Like, you didn't, there wasn't this big, what they said. I mean, and not that I didn't argue back. I was not a great teenager, but at the end of the day, it was there, what they said was the way. Like, that was, it wasn't that
What they
negotiable,
said
right?
goes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or they didn't have the resources to provide something for me because we weren't very
Yeah,
wealthy or any, like it was what it was. Like, and we got through and we got resourceful. Man, did I get creative in ways to get places
exactly. Yeah.
and how to do things. It's like, well, that's not going to work. So let me figure this out. I think we've even taken away their ability to grow resourcefulness.
Hell yeah. Big time.
Like, that's not helpful.
No, I remember when the kids were really little and they were into their like video games and stuff, which, only started coming out as we were getting older, right?
Mhm.
And at one point I stopped them because they were playing just far too much. So I said, okay, that's it. I want everybody in your put on your running shoes, get outside. I want you guys to play. And they were just standing there looking at me like, what are we going to play? Oh, I don't friggin' know. Go outside and play. You'll think of
Figure
something.
it out.
You're
Yeah.
creative. Yeah. So they all go stand outside on the deck. And they literally stood on the deck for like 30 minutes. They didn't do anything. It was almost like a punishment. They were in timeout on the deck. And at some point I was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, you told us to come outside. Well, you're not in trouble. You can play, you can, whatever. And they just couldn't figure it out. Like they couldn't figure it out.
That's
And
a
I'm like,
worrisome thing. Like,
my
I wouldn't
God.
have stayed. I would have staying inside was a punishment when we were children.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember even when I was like 5, 6 years old living in Oshawa. And the rule was come back when the streetlights come on. That's it. Come back for lunch and come back when the streetlights come on. And by God, I waited until those streetlights came on because I was busy playing. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it is different. They don't have that resourcefulness
No,
anymore.
and COVID's made them, creatures of social
Yeah,
isolation, the
even more so.
internet, everything being available online. Their friendships happen online, they happen in video games. Like, it is such a different world to navigate.
Which I think doesn't help with the vulnerability.
No, because everything's protected, right? They're protected
Yeah.
inherently by the devices they use or the mediums that they use. And I
Yeah.
don't want to shit all over it because it is what they're dealing with and it is their reality and we don't understand it and we sound super
Yeah.
old because we're talking about when the streetlights came on. But at the same time, it's like I think there's ways to temper it with the resilience. I struggle with just the fact that we can have all of these tools. We can talk about vulnerability. I still can't get my 19-year-old to talk to me. Like, it doesn't, like, that
Yeah.
hasn't changed, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a struggle. It's a constant struggle
It
for
is. So I
sure.
think it's important for them to witness you being vulnerable and them witness you come back into a conversation, say, yeah, that didn't go well. Let's try that again. But also holding them accountable for their half of that conversation.
Yes.
But there's a responsibility in a human relationship to participate.
Yeah. Well said.
It's not easy though. None of it's easy. Vulnerability is not easy. And then it worms its way. Like, if you are holding yourself accountable to being vulnerable and to being less ego driven, then you're putting yourself in the way of difficult conversations often.
Well, I really like that. I'm gonna try and start implementing that a lot more, is like leaving my ego at the door and hopefully start getting a little bit more comfortable with being more vulnerable. I think it's a great way to start.
But I think it's a practice thing too. And there's another podcast I listen to, not just this one. And one of the hosts was saying that, talking about hard conversations, and she said, I just tell myself at the beginning when I start to get that feeling, like that sick feeling, that this is going to be over soon and I will live through it and I will get through it and it will be over before I know it and I'll still be breathing. So sometimes it's just that self-talk, like whatever that is for
Yeah, and
you,
get
just saying,
yourself through it.
on the other side of this is something better than it was before I started.
That's a good idea too. Instead of just living in that moment and living in that feeling of dread,
Fear,
right?
well, it's fear, right?
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
let fear is good if you don't let it stop you.
Yes.
Hey, look at you asking heavy questions all of a sudden.
I
The tables have
know.
turned. What's up?
I know. Well, I really just wanted your advice. I took the
I don't know.
opportunity.
Well, you got my advice plus a couple rants and kids these days and yada yada yada.
So next week we're not actually having an
We're on a
episode next
break.
week because
No.
you will be in Rome.
Did you notice I said that in Italian? No.
How could I miss that?
I don't know. Vino, a pasta, pizza. Speaking of which, Pasta and a Pizza last week opened up some lively conversations in my house. Are there any more listener questions?
There is. We actually have a repeat from Dale in Ontario.
Okay.
She has a good one, actually. And I'm curious to see what your answer will be.
All right.
She wants to know, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
Can we set parameters for this?
Yeah. Okay, let's set parameters.
So like nothing like world peace and because
Yeah.
that's too easy and hunger, yada yada. We can't do that because that just like obviously those are the things we would pick because we're decent people. Personal things within our own life. Okay, number 1, I would wish that you lived closer.
Yeah, that's on my list.
That I would like to live more in the woods. Like I would like to, as much as I love my neighbors, I love my neighbors, but I would like to live in the woods. I would like to be closer to you, and I would like all of my children to talk to me about everything all the time. And yours?
Well, one of mine is to live closer to you for sure. Another one would be for our podcast to be successful because it's just so fun. I want to keep doing it.
Well, we'll keep doing it even if it's not successful. There's nothing stopping us.
That's true.
I mean, honestly, what it does is forces us to be face to face for an hour to 2 hours a week. I think we can do this forever.
Okay, so I'm taking that one off then.
Oh, you have
so
to
I'm
think
back
of a new
to
one,
two more wishes now. Oh, let me think now. I think I would wish for better health for my brother. Does that fall into the parameters or?
No, that's fine because it's personal. That's within your domain. Yeah.
Okay. And I wish that Chad and I could retire at like 58. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Why don't you just say 52?
Yeah, true.
Why are we waiting the extra 7 years or 6?
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it's realistic and the retirement gods. The retirement gods would be like, oh, okay, she's not being unrealistic.
Okay, then we can grant this one. It's within a 5-year range. Oh, who are these gods? Why do they sound like Jimmy Stewart? I do the same voice for Jimmy Stewart, my father, and Clucky the chicken from Saturday Night Live. Oh,
the retirement gods.
And now the retirement gods.
Yeah.
So next week we're away.
Yes.
The following week, I'll ask you a question in Italian.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dale for the question. That was fun.
Oh, thank you, Dale. Thank you. Keep sending them. Dale and everyone else. Paul from Norway. All of them.
Yeah.
And then it'll be February 4th.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna be jet lagged. That'll be fun. I'll be super jet lagged and I'll ask
when
you
are you
a question.
Back?
I'll ask you in Italian, or at least with an Italian accent. I'm back on the 1st. Oh yeah, so it should be sort of normal.
Okay. Yeah. Bring back some Italian words and then I'll try and translate them.
A fungula. It'll be like just a week before your birthday. A week and a day. A week and 2. Yep.
Yeah. Mine's the 12th.
And we have a new theme song that we will probably introduce.
The theme song. Yes.
And thank you to Max Lee. He
big thank you.
He's like family to me. He's my good friend Doug and Anne's son, and I've known him since birth, and he's extremely talented, currently attending York University's music program, and I love him dearly, and he's done a beautiful job in creating a very cool little intro for us. So thank you, Max.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. And we're going to play it for you right now.
listening to The Mid.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
Wen,
so
we've done it again.
we have done it again.
We've ranted, we've raved, we've answered all the questions of the world, and now we can call it a night.
We can. And have a
Thanks for
wonderful
tuning
trip.
in. Thank
I'm going to
you.
miss you.
Oh, but I'll be in touch. You know me.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, do your
Have the
housekeeping.
best time. Okay.
Thank you.
Housekeeping time. So, if you have a question or you just want to contact us or you have even a topic maybe that you would like us to
Sure.
discuss,
Please do.
you can email us at themidconversations@gmail.com. Instagram and YouTube handles are at @themid_podcast. And Facebook, you can reach us at @midpodcast. And we have a website.
Good job, Wen.
If you want to check out our website, it's themidconversation.wixsite.com/podcast.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
See you in 2 weeks.
2 weekos.
The Mid, the Mid, 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 Mid.